use. Now, that said, this did not stop people from immediately adopting Darwinian as a basis for social thought. And one of the most prominent adapters of Darwin was his cousin, Francis Galton, who created a new faith called eugenics, which took these ideas and said, okay, let's put this into practice. He wasn't willing to wait for the natural extinction of the inferior people. He thought that the state should take a hand in doing it in order to advance the process. And another thing you'll also notice about Galton here, this is a theme that reoccurs with the eugenicists, with the Nazis, and with modern-day environmentalists, which is what I call organicism, which is viewing the human individual compared to the human race or the biosphere as an analogy of the cell to the human body, where the individual is nothing, the collective is everything. So if we look at the course of nature, one authoritative fact becomes distinctly prominent. Let us make of it what we may. It is the life of the individual is treated of absolutely no importance, while the race is treated as everything, nature being wholly careless of the former except as a contributor to the maintenance of the evolution of the latter. Now, Galton, incidentally, was a man of the right, and his view was aristocratic. It annoyed him, however, considerably when these ideas were adopted on the British left. They became very fashionable in the Fabian Society. Sidney Webb said, this is exactly correct. We have to have control human breeding, but it can only be done under socialism. And so in Britain, eugenics took on a left-wing avant-garde flavor. Not so in Germany. In Germany, Darwin's chief popularizer was a man named Ernst Haeckel. Okay? Now, Ernst Haeckel was a giant of 19th century biology. He was a real scientist. And you'll still find references to his work in biology textbooks today, and for good reasons. However, and he was also a tremendous popularizer. He was, as it were, the Carl Sagan of his day, but with the added prestige of being a dean of the German Academy in a place where such things carried enormous prestige. And just to give you a sense, Darwin's Origin of Species first edition was 2,000 copies. Haeckel's books would sell 400,000 copies in a run. Okay, so he was explicitly based on Darwin, and he didn't make bones about that. But he was also an extreme racist and a virulent anti-Catholic, anti-Slav, anti-Semite, pan-German fanatic. He also invented a religion called monism to carry the faith of eugenics as the basis of the further development of society and mankind. A brief sample from Haeckel. Since the lower races, such as the Vedas or the Australian Negroes, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes and dogs than to civilized Europeans, we must therefore assign a totally different value to their lives. Now, Haeckel had numerous academic followers, and I'll read just a few. Friedrich Hellwall, History of Culture, whose book is dedicated to Haeckel, 1875. Listen to this. Science knows no natural right. In nature, only one right reigns, which is no right, the right of the stronger, violence. But violence is the highest source of law. Properly speaking, the right of the stronger has always been valid at all times in human history. Science has proven that just as in nature, the struggle for existence, Darwinian phrase, is the moving principle of evolution and perfection, in that the weak are worn away and must make room for the strong, so also in world history, the destruction of weaker nations through the stronger is the postulate of progress. War is the basis of progress. Okay? And then here is a French follower, Georges Vacher de la Pogue. He was a French proto-Nazi. In his decrepit old age, he became a pet of Margaret Sanger. But it's just stuff's incredible. It says, we are marching through monism, Haeckel's pseudo-religion, towards the complete elimination of the idea of religion. We are marching by way of new formulas based on social hygiene, i.e. eugenics, towards the elimination of the idea of morality. To the celebrated formula that sums up the secular Christianity of the revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity, we reply, determinism, inequality, selection. Okay, there it is. And this didn't stay in the academy. Okay. General Friedrich von Behr-Hardy, German General Staff, wrote a bestseller in 1912 called Germany in the Next War. Churchill comments on it, by the way, in one of his books about World War I. Science proves that everywhere the right of the stronger reigns. War is necessary because it eliminates the weak. Okay? Other European leaders looked at their stuff being put out not just by these crazy professors, but by members of the Kaiser's elite, the German General Staff, and they said, these guys want there to be another war. They want to have a general war in order to have a war. Okay? You know, the old joke about, you know, in post-World War II Germany and in the British occupied zone, the British army has a cricket match with some Germans, and the Germans win, and the leader of the German team says to the British, haha, we beat you at your national game, and the Brit says, that's okay, old boy. A couple of years ago, we beat you at yours. Okay, and there's an inner truth to that. There was no reason to have World War I from Germany's point of view. Germany, the Kaiser's Germany was huge. It was incredibly prosperous. It was unthreatened by anyone. They created the war because they believed in this ideology. Otto Amann, war is the most majestic, highest and most majestic form of the struggle for existence. Schlieffen, racial war, once it has broken out, can only be ended by the destruction of one of the parties. So, there you have World War I, created by the force of these ideas. And World War I is the seminal catastrophe of the 20th century because it basically set in motion all the others. Nazism, communism, fascism, World War II, the Holocaust, they all ultimately flow from the derangement of Western society caused by World War I. So, what about the good old USA? Well, eugenics came here too. Charles Davenport, he picked up eugenics directly from Galton, came back here. He sold the Harriman family on funding it here. Initially, establishing a social relationship with young Mary Harriman, she introduced her to her mother, the widow of the railroad magnate E.H. Harriman, and she became convinced and bankrolled the operation. And Averill Harriman, her son, later a Democratic Party kingpin, also was involved. The 1912, they set up the Eugenics Records Office, the ERO. H.S. Laughlin, superintendent, writes model sterilization laws for involuntary sterilization of paupers, criminals, invalids, diseased people, other undesirables. It was adopted in many states and Nazi Germany. They did many fine tricks. For example, in 1914, Dr. Joseph Goldberger of the U.S. Public Health Service found the cure, or found the cause, rather, for pellagra, which was a vitamin deficiency disease afflicting poor whites and blacks in the American South in large numbers. He said this is being caused by their diet. The Eugenics Records Office assembled a massive team to refute him, and they had all these records that proved that the majority of people that had pellagra, one of their parents or grandparents had also had pellagra, thus proving that it was hereditary. Okay, and as a result, and they had the firepower to discredit Goldberger for 20 years. These ideas were not accepted for 20 years as a result of this thing, which was insane. Though their main focus ultimately was on immigration. The Second International Congress of Eugenics, held at the American Museum of Natural History, 1921, focused on stopping the immigration of non-Nordic people into the United States. Okay. One of the kingpins of this movement is Madison Grant, the head of the Immigration Restriction League, okay, and a member of the Eugenics Society. His classic is The Passing of the Great Race, 1916. A strong seller in the U.S. and a runaway bestseller in Germany, in fact, especially in Nazi Germany. You'll see why. In Europe today, the amount of Nordic blood in each nation is a fair measure of its strength and civilization. In the city of New York, there is a Native American aristocracy resting upon layer of immigrants of lower races. It has taken us 50 years to learn that speaking English, wearing good clothes, and going to school and to church does not transform a Negro into a white man. Americans will have similar experience with the Polish Jew, whose dwarf stature, peculiar mentality, and ruthless concentration on self-interest are being engrafted upon the stock of the nation. Indiscriminate efforts to preserve babies among the lower classes often results in serious injury to the race. The laws of nature require the obliteration of the unfit, and human life is valuable